You all set, Caitlin? Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planning and Zoning public hearing for Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. If everyone could please rise, salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first public hearing is a continuation from our previous meeting for application 21-41P, Evergreen Walk LLC. Our order tonight will be to once again hear from the applicant, then we'll hear from town staff, then we'll hear from members of the public, first those in favor, and then against, or people having questions or comments, and then we will hear from commissioners. If anyone has a cell phone, if they could please put it to mute, we would appreciate it. And at this time, I'll call our applicant. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, we're just going to read our public notice. Steve? Thank you.
To be published in the Journal Enquirer Thursday, December 2nd, 2021, and Thursday, December 9, 2021. South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, December 14, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. Number 1, application 21-41P, Evergreen Walk, LLC, multifamily text amendment. Request to amend specific requirements for multifamily residential use in the Buckland Gateway Development Zone, including section 4.2.15, A.2.E, to increase the number of units permitted to 365 units and modify section 4.2.15, A.2.C to modify criteria for achieving the required 2-to-1 residential to commercial ratio for mixed-use developments within this zone, continued from November 30th, 2021. Number 2, application 21-42P, Evergreen Walk, LLC, request to modify the Evergreen Walk General Plan of Development in accordance with section 4.2.15, D.2, and a special exception to section 4.2.15, D.1 for a 165-unit residential development for a portion of 151 Buckland Road within Evergreen Walk, known as Unit 7C, and being approximately 2,000 feet west of Buckland Road and 1,000 feet north of Smith Street, Buckland Road Gateway Development Zone, continued from November 30, 2021. Do I need to read the rest?
You get down to Bart? Yeah, it's part of our public notice.
To view this meeting, please tune into channel 16 if your provider is Cox Cable, or go to gmedia.swagit.com/live. Copies of the application are on file with the office of the town clerk and/or planning department and online at https://www.southwindsor-ct.gov/planning-department/pages/planning-commission-applications. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard, and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who may require an accommodation can contact staff Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 860-644-2511, extension 329. I guess that's not 2329, right? Okay.
All set? Okay. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We have Commissioner Foley absent tonight, so Commissioner Bernstein is going to sit in his place, and I'm going to appoint Commissioner Dexter as our vice chair for the evening. So, and with that, we'll call the first applicant forward for Evergreen Walk LLC, application 21-41P. Good evening. For the record, I'll put your mask back on. Sorry, but it is the town's policy, which I have to respect. I don't think your microphone's on, Howard.
No?
Yep.
Okay. For the record, my name is Howard Rappaport. I'm a principal with Continental Properties, the applicant before you tonight. We appreciate the opportunity to present again our proposed new community on Unit 7C, and it's our objective tonight to respond to any further questions you may have and to clarify some items that came up at the last hearing on November 30th. As I articulated at that last hearing, Continental is committed to building a unique, high-quality product here on Unit 7C. This will be a very special product in what we believe to be a special location. The cottage-style dwelling units present a new rental housing opportunity that is not available in the town of South Windsor or even the greater submarket. The same is true, we believe, about the four-story building, as this alternate housing type does not exist in town on a non-age restricted basis. These are what we would call the next generation of rental dwelling units with distinctive styling, not otherwise available in the town, as I've said. The direct entry cottage-style units will appeal, we believe, to a wider array of residents, including many who already live in town, who would like to sell their single-family home, but who are not interested in moving into a congregate setting with shared hallways and without a direct entry garage, which we offer here. If I could take a few minutes, I'd like to address the affordable component, which was discussed at the last hearing. We were asked whether or not we will comply with Michelle Leip's recommendation for 10% affordables. Although the 10% inclusionary set-aside is not yet enacted in your ordinances, and although an inclusionary set-aside was not included in our initial application, we can and will comply with the 10% recommendation from Michelle. However, respectfully, we unfortunately cannot comply with the request to further increase the inclusionary set-aside to 15%, or anything in excess of 10%, for reasons I will articulate here. It simply is not cost feasible here to include more than 10% affordables. It's not financeable, it's not financially feasible or financially viable. It's anything above 10% is really the straw, colloquially, that breaks the camel's back. We discussed the other communities that Continental has built in Connecticut. And Vice Chair Dexter asked, in any of those communities, whether we have affordables. We've built over 1,230 units in Connecticut over the past 8 years. 6 of those 7 communities are each 100% market rate. The Milford community, which I mentioned, was an 8-30G community, meaning it was a lawsuit against a municipality brought by the original owner of the land. And I'd like to distinguish what made that work at 30% and why I'm here before you tonight explaining that nothing in excess of 10% works. First, the rents in Milford, because it's the first town in New Haven County next to Fairfield County, are substantially higher than in South Windsor. For example, a 2-bedroom rents for 32% more in the Milford project than in South Windsor. $2,780 roughly versus $2,100. The one bedrooms rent for 24% more, roughly $2,240 versus $1,800. And Milford also includes 3 bedrooms, which we're not proposing here on Unit 7C. Those 3 bedrooms rent for in excess of $3,700. So what happens is that the increase in revenue supports more affordability, very frankly. On the cost side, Milford started in 2018. Our costs there were at least probably 20 to 25% lower. So we made our transaction with our subcontractors on 2018 prices. We bought our supplies on 2018 prices. We all know what's happened with inflation, and the construction industry has been hit very, very hard as well. So the costs are very high, much higher today than they were in 2018, and this project won't start until roughly probably the fourth quarter of 2022. And then on the expense side, taxes, stabilized taxes in South Windsor are approximately 37% higher than in Milford. South Windsor has a mill rate of 37.86 in comparison to the mill rate in Milford of 27.65. So for all of these reasons, an affordability set aside above 10% unfortunately does not work. And given these financial challenges in development of this quality, it would again present a project that could not go forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has about any of these issues, and I can answer them now, or I can turn it over to Maura Cochran, our economic consultant, to clarify some items in her report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Maura Cochran, Bartram & Cochran, the economic advisor for the project. And what is being passed out now are minor revisions. It's not a PowerPoint, but I thought it was easier to give you a clean copy than it would be to just hand you 5 pieces of paper. I'd like to start off by saying that I want to make a clarification. When I was here 2 weeks ago, I really meant to say, and we were covering so much, that your staff of the City Board of Ed has been so helpful to me in writing the report. That was not meant that they were endorsing this in any way, shape, manner, or form. I was just trying to be complimentary because it really is exemplary, the raw data that they gave me to help come to conclusions. And the conclusions are mine, not theirs. So just want to put that on the record. If I said something that was not come out the right way, it was unintentional, but thank you for the staff and the help that they had in this report. So last time, fortunately, 1 or 2 things were pointed out that I thought, well, it's just better to clarify it. There are only 5 pages, and I'll go through them very quickly. Page 1. I called it Tempo 2, and Howard nicely pointed out that that is a working title. So I wanted to clarify that. If you go to page 11, it was pointed out that I had a ratio or 2 wrong. And by the strangest coincidence in life, in my line of work, the SLAM report came out today. So while I was at Staples getting this printed, I'm reading the new SLAM report on enrollment, which I have not read in great detail, but I will note under K-12 student ratio, they have a factor of 0.45, and so we agree. Where some of my ratios are different than theirs, that's fine. As I pointed out last time, I was trying to triangulate, saying, you know, here's the Rutgers study, here's the Connecticut study, here's the stuff that was in the last Malone room, now SLAM, and you kind of make a little triangle. You try to get these things together, and very nicely, the information has come together. agreeing with the work we came up with before. I also made a correction on page 14, and this was going back and forth with the information that we got of how many students there were at 23 houses in the Toll Brothers project, and that there are 44 buildings, houses there. So I just rounded it up, and I just said, okay, here's 44, here's the same ratio, and it's neither here nor there because what we're doing is an economic impact study for what I call Tempo 2, sorry. Just to say, the bottom line is that Tempo 2 is going to be throwing off favorable cash flow. And with the revised SLAM report and other economic reports you've had over the last year, it keeps coming home. Single-family, 3- and 4-bedroom homes throw off a lot more students than if you have 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. And the last correction was on page 16, where I changed to reflect that it's the cottage home because that is the term that the developer is using. So those were the corrections to the report. I'm very happy to report that when I was sitting there nervously thumbing through the new report that came out today, it reinforced the work that we had done, and you can look forward to a very successful economic development with the project that you're discussing tonight. Do you have any questions?
We'll get around to questions later.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, I'm Alan Lamson, Vice President of FLB Architecture and Planning, and I'm the Planning Director of that firm. I'm here tonight to just clarify 2 items. The first was there was a question brought up of Mr. Mitchell regarding the square footage of the project that was in his traffic report. And I believe he said at the time that that was a preliminary number. We resubmitted the report to you, to Michelle tonight. I believe she's handed it out. The only change is in the table, and it changed the square footage of the project that would be used by OSTA for this project, and it changed it down to 216,337 square feet. That's based on the preliminary plans that we have submitted to you, but that is the square footage. The old number was over 300,000, and it was an early working number, and we have now clarified that to match the plans that have been submitted to you for the general plan. The second item is we have been having discussions with the staff regarding one aspect of our...
Alan, could you please speak into the microphone?
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
Yep. My mother always said she knew where I was all the time and she didn't need to do anything except open the door and listen, so I'm okay. We've been working on the portion of the text amendment that has to do with how do we offset the 2-to-1 ratio. That's what we've been working with. We would like to offer 2 suggestions, and this just came up at the end of the day today, so we don't have a draft to give you, but we would certainly be willing to work it out with the staff. One is in the original draft, there was a reference to a 12-month period. We would like to remove that because we think the second part of this will solve the issue. And we're just concerned that we don't know what the economy looks like. And if this project gets slowed down at all, the 12-month thing means we could lose the opportunity to do the match. But what we're willing to do is to put into this that we would use no more than 50% of the development that this commission has approved since June 1st of this year as our offset against the residential. So, for example, later in June or early July, Costco got an approval. was 160,000 square feet. We're suggesting we'll only use 80,000 from Costco. And about a month ago, you approved a revised general plan of development for Unit 5. We would only use 50% of that. That would get us very close, just a little bit over, the square footage we need to offset the square footage of this residential project, and that would clean it up. There wouldn't be anything else that could happen with the square footage on those two general plans. Okay? So we understand we don't want to open this up so that the whole world could start using some of the square footage, and we think that that would resolve it. So we'll use half of Costco's and whatever we need up to 50% of Unit 5, and we're done. Which I believe, if these numbers of the amount of square footage remains the same, we would be looking at about 15,000 square feet of the 60,000 that's potential on Unit 5. We'd use 15, which is less than 50%, but we would be done. Okay, and that would kind of assure that unless this commission took separate action on it, this would be the last residential project. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm corrected. I said 2021. I said, yeah, 2021, and that's correct. This is wrong. Yeah, June, because Costco got approved. Oh, in 2020. In 2020, then I do stand corrected. Yep, the general plan. That was June of 2020. Yep, but we're only talking about the two general plans. That's it. Doesn't matter the date. That's what we're talking about, just those two. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
So we're prepared to answer any questions or to amplify any of our answers. We would welcome your support. We believe this is a distinctive type of dwelling unit and presents housing opportunities that are very worthy to have in your municipality. Happy to answer any questions that you have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we will turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. The only update I have for you is to provide, I did send to you by email today the numbers that the school just generated. This is actually being reported to the school tonight. This is the SLAM report. And I also sent you an email I received from Dr. Carter. I think at the last meeting I was asked to follow up with her related to some of the data that was provided at the meeting. I just would bring to your attention on page 12 of the SLAM report is kind of the chart that is comparable to the chart that the consultant, Laura Cochran, had provided to you. That's kind of the latest, greatest October 2021 data as far as kids coming out of the different projects to give you your ratios. I think as presented, that they're not far off from what we saw in the report there, but this is the latest data.
Page 12 of what document?
Page 12 of the SLAM report.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that should have been delivered to you tonight.
Michelle, while the commissioners are looking at that, could you say exactly what SLAM is? I mean, is it a report?
No, I'm sorry. That is the name of the firm. I'm not sure exactly what it stands for. Do you know? It used to be Malone and Broom, and they morphed into SLAM out of Stecker, LeBeau, Arnell, and McManus. They are a consulting firm that this Board of Education uses and has used the same gentleman to do the demography for projections of the pupils.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So I'm just going to take a minute to read some of the comments from Dr. Carter. Again, I did think you did receive this, but just to get on the record some of her concerns. So again, I reached out to her, and she had reviewed the planning and zoning meeting, I believe, online. And she said that she was just concerned that her office had been referenced several times and wanted to just clarify some of the things for the record. So she goes on to say it's accurate that Ms. Cochran reached out to the superintendent's office for information regarding enrollment projections and per pupil spending, specifically provided enrollment projection reports and our demographers in the state's calculation per pupil spending. Neither of these data sets are ones that the district produces or calculates. It's important to note that the district did not vet nor did it endorse any conclusions drawn from the data that was presented by Ms. Cochran. For example, there are a variety of calculations and methods used to determine the cost of educating a student. The only calculation that the district utilizes is the net current expenditure per pupil produced by the state for all Connecticut school districts. I'm unfamiliar with alternative calculations that were presented that evening. She goes on to give a couple examples of concerns she had that she thought maybe some conversations had been combined. She gave example A. This is a statement that people are going back to their native countries by the time their kids get to high school. It was her observation that parents around the world want to have their kids in their own schools by the time they hit high school. So Dr. Carter goes on to say, this is not something I have said, nor is it something I've heard anyone else say. I'm not sure where she is getting that information. She may be referencing questions posed by our demographers early in our enrollment growth regarding the possible impact work visas could have on enrollment trends. Our demographers identified the top companies that employ our families to new districts and noted that higher proportion of work visas associated with these employers. Demographers wondered if the limited duration of work visas may result in fewer students matriculating through graduation. That is different than claiming parents around the world want their kids in their own schools by the time they hit high school. An example B, Dr. Carter didn't seem as concerned about high school because she says it's not an enormous stressor, that's the grammar school. That was likely confusing for commission members as to the currently ongoing public discussions and other forums regarding the impact of our enrollment growth is having on our high school. Just as recently as November 17th, I shared an enrollment statement with the Capital Projects Committee, which demonstrates the need for the high school to resume using Wapping Schools and annex student enrollment growth. The October 2020 enrollment report from Malone and McBroom called for the high school to grow by 454 more students by the year 2030. There is simply not enough room for 454 students to be housed in the high school's current footprint. I'm wondering if Ms. Cochran misunderstood the actual enrollment growth at the elementary level was not concurrent with projected growth at the high school. It's accurate when our enrollment growth began at the elementary level in 2017. There's no immediate impact to the high school as that would occur in the future. The future is now, and we are in fact bracing for the impact at the high school. I'm certainly not assigning motive or malicious intent, but I do find the presentation to be puzzling. I can understand why some of the statements made were confusing for commission members, as Ms. Cochran's statements were not reflective of statements they have heard from the district in other presentations. To be clear, the district offers no opinion on the merits of the PZC application and does not have the expertise to do so. The purpose of this communication is to provide clarity regarding statements made that relate to the school district. It may be of interest that our annual enrollment projections have been calculated based on October 21 data, and Mike Zuba, formerly of Malone and McBroom, now with SLAM Collaborative, will present this refreshed data to the Board of Education at its regular meeting on Tuesday, December 14th. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you're seeking further clarity. Thank you, Kate. And she did forward me that report, which again I forwarded on to the commission. That's all I have, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn to the town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing new at this time.
Okay, then at this time, we'll turn to members of the public. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. And for anybody coming up to speak, we should have a sign-in sheet there. If you could print your name and address and then introduce yourself to the commission, please.
Good evening. My name is Karen Johnson. I'm with Charter Realty and Development. We are the managers of the promenade shops at Evergreen Walk, as well as the managers for the Evergreen Walk Master Association. I will confess I haven't reviewed the details of this pending application, but in general, I'd like to say that we support new residential at Evergreen Walk and especially appreciate the variety that's being proposed. So distinctively different than what is out there today in terms of residential offerings. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Viteri.
Thank you, Bart. I just had one question about the difference between an affordable unit versus a full standard unit. What specifically are the differences between those two units?
In answer to your question, the difference between the units is one of just rent. The finishes, the amenities available.
Howard, just for the record, could you reintroduce yourself?
Sure. For the record, Howard Rappaport, principal with Continental Properties. So in answer to your question, the difference is the rent. And the finishes are the same, the amenities that are available are the same. It's just a question of making it affordable to someone who is able to qualify to pay 30% of 80% of the area median income as their total rent obligation.
Okay, good. I had seen other examples, not necessarily around here, where there was actually a difference in the amenities being offered, and I was just
No,
curious
yeah,
if that's here.
we're-
So
we're-
it's
we don't do
identical
that.
except for the rent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All set? Okay, Commissioner Dexter.
I think I would only add to that, Bob, is that these units are deed restricted within the contract of the whole unit for 40 years.
Yes,
So that's the only other difference.
and we're willing to comply with that.
Yes, of course. And I figured the 15% was a long shot,
I understand.
but, you have to try because the state is asking us to try.
I understand,
And
Commissioner
so we
Dexter.
appreciate the 10%, appreciate that it's units that are going to look and smell and feel just like everything else, and that's
Thank you.
important to a segment of our town. I did have a question about, Alan, I don't know, if you made this, maybe I heard something, that you said this is the last residential development in the general plan that you're going to propose. Did you say that?
I'm sorry?
That this would be the last residential
If,
plan?
with the existing development that's there. Oh, yeah, and she just mentioned Unit 8, of course, has an approval for senior living,
Oh, that's
restricted.
already part of the plan.
That won't change, because that's
Okay.
there. But as far as what we're talking about, a project like this, nobody would be able to use any of the other existing retail, commercial, as an offset against residential. So unless they come in and build a lot more commercial, which isn't going to happen because there's only 4 pieces of land left, and this is one of them.
Right. So just
we're
by
done.
default, we're kind of at the end.
Yep.
All right. And I just kind of want to go on record saying that we got a lot of information tonight, and I know, I probably could have taken more time with Dr. Carter's information sent by email, but there was a lot I really want to sit down with my little calculator and really look through everything. So I feel a little at a disadvantage with that information tonight. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. So, first of all, I want to understand what the complete text of is. Now, I have a piece of paper that's labeled Evergreen Walk, August 23, 2021, and it has 2 sections of text amendment. And then there was a piece of paper on the table tonight that said additional conditions for zone text change and some added wording.
So that would be you know how I give you standard approval conditions with any suggested wording changes? That would be a suggested wording to add to the text amendment. So that's something not provided by the applicant, that's provided by me.
Okay,
So you're just dealing with the August text is what the applicant has proposed.
so this is the applicant's proposal.
Correct.
And this is what we would add.
If you go along with the 10%, you'd be adding that as an amendment to it.
Now, let me just pick a little bit at the wording of number 1 in the new section. It says, add section 4215A2E. But we already have here 4215A2E. Is this to mean add the following words to this section? Is that the intent there? Or is it a section F?
Michelle, I don't think your microphone is on.
Okay. Yeah, so we would be adding, so it would be added into the same section that they're modifying, we would be adding that provision into it.
Okay, thank you. So you, now I forget who was speaking, quoted the mill rate difference between South Windsor and, what was the town?
Milford.
Milford. What were the assessment dates for those two mill rates? Because mill rate is only relevant to the actual assessment, and the dates could have changed the denominator that's used to calculate the mill rate. So is there a real difference in taxes by that amount? Or is this just a difference in when the assessments were done?
Those are current mill rates. We are assessed as of, I believe, October 1st of each year, with revaluations, of course, in accordance with Connecticut law.
That's what I meant, revaluation, not assessment, yeah.
Yeah, so they're apples to apples with, if you had the same assessment and you were using, and I may be corrected by one other member of my team, but I don't think so. If you're using a higher mill rate, a substantially higher mill rate, it will result mathematically in higher taxes.
But I mean, that is actually not the case, because, I mean, we've had the experience of dramatic changing housing values, yet collecting approximately the same amount of tax, because the mill rate had to change to collect the same amount of money. So I'm trying to understand whether this is really a difference in the effective tax rate on a building of equal size and shape, or this is just a artifact of when the valuations were done.
I believe we look at a number of projects across the state, and when we have appraisals done and we have tax analyses done for properties with the same rents in different towns, the mill rate is generally a direct reflection of how much, subject to assessor's discretion, which I recognize, that we can expect to pay in taxes. Mike, do you want to jump in here? Because you're, put yourself on the record.
Hi, Michael Stone, consultant with Continental Properties.
Could you repeat your name again?
Michael Stone.
Michael Stone.
Oh, sure. For the record, I do have an extensive background, about 30 years, about 10 years as a commercial appraiser, commercial broker, also an investor. I think the nature of your question is going back to when the 5-year reval period existed, right? So if in Milford they did reval at a certain period of time when, say, valuations were lower versus in South Windsor, you might not have an apples-to-apples comparison. I think it all comes down to the tax burden per unit. And when you look at any 5-year period, there won't be that big a difference between the assessment that's going to affect the tax burden per unit. So the difference in the mill rate is very applicable to what your tax burden is going to be. So that 5-year period won't have that big a difference. Does that answer the question?
So if I was looking at a 2-bedroom unit of a similar number of square feet with similar amenities, they could be taxed the same but have a different mill rate just because of when the evaluation was done. But you're saying that what's the difference for, not based on the mill rate, but on the actual taxes on 2 very similar units, physically similar units?
That's right. It comes down to the tax burden, and the difference in the assessment itself during any 5-year period is not going to make up for a 10 mil difference. And as investors look throughout the state, the mill rate, say over 40 or under 30, is a very relevant piece, and it's generally equalized. So you don't, at the end of the day, the Milford tax burden for a developer is much less than the South Windsor tax burden. no matter when you look at it during that 5-year period.
Okay, I guess I'll have to live with that answer. So we got this report from the school, which I was able to read this afternoon. I luckily don't have a day job, so and the one thing we have a lot of numbers about how many students are coming, but it was no comparison to the capacity of the schools to absorb the increased number of schools. In other words, are our schools, as they've been built, and the new Pleasant Valley School and the Wapping School when it's recommissioned as a school, do we have the capacity to absorb the number of students that this development is going to bring along, in addition to all the other sources of increase? And since we don't have the Board of Ed here, I'm suspecting that's an answer that we'll have to get another time. Because I've heard Dr. Carter speak in the past, and this is several years ago, and she seemed to indicate that we were able to absorb, we were planning to be able to absorb a certain number of these developments that are talked about in this report. And then just one more thing, again, talking about the last resident, Mr. Lamson, you're not saying that this is the last residential development that Evergreen Walk is expected to come in ever? This is just within the current plan or within the plan of development? Or?
In all honesty, I can't tell you what's going to happen in 15 years, but under the current conditions with the approvals we have in place for the other things, Evergreen Walk does not plan to bring back another market rate project.
All right, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Cavagnero.
I had a question or two entering tonight that were answered. So really, I don't have a comment. I'm not going to take up too much time, but they were answered, so thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any real concerns about the application. I like the renderings that I'm seeing from Continental Properties, but I do want to go down a similar avenue that Commissioner Wagner went down in terms of the school population. This issue's come up in our meetings often, and I've always been of the mind, based on comments I've heard from Dr. Carter and from the chairman of the Board of Education, that if they come, we will find a way to educate them. But this letter that we received from Dr. Carter kind of stunned me when I read it, and one thing in particular I just want to read. It says, I shared enrollment data with the Capital Projects Committee, which demonstrates the need for the high school to resume using Wapping School as an annex due to the enrollment growth. The October 2020 enrollment report from Malone and McBroom called for the high school to grow by 454 more students by the year 2030. There simply is not enough room for 454 additional students to be housed in the high school's current footprint. So this isn't really a question for anyone. This is more just to get my comments into the record. This is the first time I've read something from either the superintendent or someone from the Board of Education that kind of put up the red flag a little bit on this issue. So I guess, to me, what I would like to see happen would be for, as Commissioner Wagner suggested, maybe this commission along with the Board of Education get together to discuss this strategically, which to me makes sense because, as I understand it, we're about to begin development of our plan of conservation development renewal. So no time like the present to think these things through. But this would be a concern. If this weren't a concern, I mean, I would have no problem, most likely, feeling very positive about this application. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Moira, could you come up, please?
Yes, sir? Maura Cochran, Bartram and Cochran.
When Orchard Hill was built, do you know how many students it was designed for?
Not off the top of my head, no. I mean, that is in Malone and McBroom's report from 2 years ago. Malone and McBroom just folded, and the demographer from there went to work for SLAM. So that SLAM report came out today.
Okay.
And I haven't had chance to go into any depth, nor was my work to do a peer review of someone else. I will note that on page, I believe it's, wow, talk about it too fond, 18 of the SLAM report that came out today, for the K through 5 enrollment, they are anticipating Evergreen Walk adding 4 new students to the district.
How many?
You know, so, I mean, you seem to be discussing working with this through with the Board of Ed, and I'm certainly not going to speak for the Board of Ed as to what the pressures are in your school system. I'm just here to address the economics of the new development, and it certainly throws off quite a bit of money.
Okay. I actually looked at the original plan, which was made public years ago for the schools, the original 10-year timeline. And Orchard Hill, the most it was projected to have for enrollment, and it ended up being 564 students. And that was when it first opened. And then the projections after that were dropping off slightly, getting down to about 500. And now, with the current numbers, as of the old Malone and McBroom numbers dated October 22nd, 2019, from the South Windsor Public Schools, they showed it a projection for 2019, 2020 at 637. And I'm just moving towards what Commissioner Wagner was talking about, where how many is too many for our schools. Again, the old numbers from Malone and McBroom had it capping off at almost 700 students. Now, it's good to see in the new SLAM report that they're projecting a lot less than that. And by a lot less, I had a sticky here.
Look on
Page 3? Okay. Currently, the enrollment is looking like 641. But they also have it graphed in here somewhere that projects it out, I believe. Of course, I just glanced through it also. I'm sure I would like more time to review the information as well with the other commissioners. They are projecting out a maximum of 653 in 26. That is on page 28 of the SLAM report. And pretty much staying around there within like 20 kids. But my point was, it seems like it's a lot more students than the original building was designed for. Economics and these units. Moira, from what I've seen with these units, they have a den or office included in some of the units. Do you know how many units have that?
I'll let Howard speak to that.
Okay.
I would need to check my notes. They're in the cottage-style units. Some of the one-bedrooms have a den or an office. It does not have a closet. It has a double clear French door, so it is intended to be an office. And
The
it's
key
about,
word is intended.
well, it's about 80 square feet or so. So it's designed, I should say it's designed to be an office.
About the size of a nursery, though, too, you know? Okay, so you said you could check your notes on that, and you're saying it's only the cottage style, not the
Correct.
four-story building?
That's correct.
Okay, so I would appreciate knowing how many,
Sure.
and if they're just one bedroom or the two bedroom or both?
Well, they're just one bedroom. I can get you the number if I have a minute to check my
Yeah,
notes.
please do. Moira, could you come back up? Moira, we had a similar application come before us previously, and we asked the economist if this would have an impact on the number of possible students. Could you let me know if you feel that this will have an impact on the development's possible students?
I'm not sure if could you rephrase your question? Are you saying, I mean, there'll be a development, there'll be adding students.
I'm speaking specifically to the home office dens possibly being used as bedrooms.
Okay, just at 30,000 feet, when people are designing these dens, it has no windows, it has no closet, it is an alcove with sliding doors. So they are not, they're meant to be an office, and in the, I would say the current trend, whether it's home working or COVID, people want a home office. So by not putting a window in and not putting in closets and doing...
But they do have windows. So at least that's what you gave us.
Okay, again, I'm doing the economic analysis, and I was told that those were home offices and they were not to be habitated.
Okay,
So I did
so
not...
again, I'm going to the economics of it.
Okay.
What is your interpretation? Will this add to
No,
the
it won't.
possible students?
No. And
Okay.
I will say, just on how I did my economics, they are really, really conservative, the way I did my economics. So, for instance, in other reports by other researchers, they would say, oh, well, X would be new to the school system, and I put in everybody being new to the school system. They would say, so anytime I went back and Howard's office very nicely went back for 4 years and gave me the actual number of students and the actual number in each of the school systems. So rather than taking a low number or an average, I took the absolute highest number of students that have ever been in Tempo 1. So I have like quite a bit of wiggle room in the numbers that were presented just because I wanted to be conservative, because
Okay,
that's
on this
how I wrote it.
particular question,
Okay.
so are you saying it's not possible that one of those dens or offices will be used as a bedroom?
Well, it's not legal. I don't think it would be, but I mean.
Legal and reality are two different things.
I can't stand up here and testify that no one's going to go use it as a bedroom, but the reality is that the way it was designed and the way the zoning is, it's not to be used as a bedroom, and you could stop it being used as a bedroom if you see people using it as a bedroom.
Okay.
If your question was, is that going to add more students, and did I, are my numbers razor thin? I allowed for more students just because I was basing the reality of Tempo 1. So.
And again, some of this is projections, and things can change out there. Reality and projections aren't always the same. That's been proven with our past projections for school enrollments. And just for your information, the economist who did the other application felt there was a slight uptick in the possibility of students based on the fact of the home office or den possibly being used as a bedroom. So I'm just making you aware of that.
I read through the last economist's report, very well written. He's a great guy, well thought out. But his approach of how he had so many more students coming into the school system was a different analysis than mine. And I think my numbers are very conservative. And even if someone chooses to put an infant or someone in the office, I don't think it's going to impact the economics that I gave you because I was conservative.
Thank you. The Rutgers study.
Yes.
You point to that, but I've pointed out numerous times in the past, that's a flawed study.
That's why I didn't use it.
Well, it's written in here that it was referenced. And also, given the Rutgers study and what it was based on, some of it was based on student populations in condos in South Windsor. And those condos are now holding probably 10 to 15 more kids than they were when that study was done. So things change. I'm just not comfortable with the numbers that have been given. As Commissioner Foley said previously, when Tempo 1 went in, we were told that there would only be so many kids. And then the reality was there were a lot more kids. So I've still got some concerns in that. Alan, could you come up, please? Alan, how many times has this general plan been changed? Did I read like 21, or am I too high?
I wouldn't know how many. It could very well be near 20.
I thought that was part of your presentation.
No.
Michelle, do you remember?
I thought 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something around there.
Okay, 14. And, one of my concerns, and I appreciate you saying this is as planned right now, this is probably the last residential, and I don't want to be putting your words into your mouth, so correct me if I'm overstating what you're saying. But if you had an approved use and you felt that it wasn't going to be economically feasible in 5 years, and I'm talking about the senior residence that was previously approved, what would stop you from coming in and asking for a change to a text amendment to put residential there?
Well, under the text amendment we're proposing to revise it to, there wouldn't be any more commercial to offset the residential.
But your next text amendment could take that out of the
And
recipe
this-
altogether.
And this commission, no matter who's on it, has complete control over that.
Yep.
You could tell us 5 minutes into a public hearing, 6 years from now, don't bother anymore, you're not going to get it approved.
Yeah. Some of what's going on with the Housing Committee, and I do appreciate how the suggested changes were made. And I've been an advocate to move it up to 15% across the board in town. I also have concerns with the way it is right now of a period not less than 40 years, because that usually ends up being 40 years for any applicants. And there's nothing that says that we couldn't make that in the future in perpetuity. So in what I've been for the seminars and stuff, that's been part of the discussion, and I think it was Michael Ziskis that had brought that forward at one of the seminars. And I see Attorney Smith stepping forward, so.
Chris Smith for the record of Alter and Pearson. Mike Zisk is actually in Norfolk tonight where they're voting on a 100% for a nonprofit affordable housing proposal.
Could you raise that up a little, Chris?
I'm very
right on the end.
How's this, better?
Yes,
very familiar with Mike. One of the questions or issues with this in perpetuity is whether that whether that's valid as a matter of law, and whether that flies in the face of the rules against perpetuities with real estate. But I'm not here to. We could spend more than a bar association's session with the Wesleyan program talking about this issue. I think that your town planner came up with the 40 years for good reason. I think you're all familiar with 8-30G, and the requirements are that you have a minimum time period at the 80% or 60% median income with a deed restriction of a minimum 40 years, and that's for a set-aside development. And that's where you qualify for your points. And kudos to the commission, and I've been here before, and I've done other matters here in town, and you did qualify, and you do have your moratorium, and congratulate you for that. And with
Chris,
the 10%,
could I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
You mentioned the 60% threshold.
Mm-hmm.
And this is with the 80% median.
Exactly. I was just saying the 40 years comes from, I believe, the 830G formula, and to qualify for the points you have to have for a set-aside development, as the commission may well be aware, the 40-year time period for a deed restriction. And that's why we have it. So I think, as suggested by the town planner and as agreed to by Mr. Rappaport, he would be able to do that, and it would be financially feasible for him to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But to increase that, to a higher number, it just doesn't work. And I see that all the time throughout the state. And in 830G, when amendments have occurred over time to include the 60%, it just drives up the density because you need the market rate units to offset those units, the affordable component. And generally, it's a wash. You lose a unit market rate generally with a 60%, depending upon where you are in the state. But again, to Mr. Rappaport's credit, he is able to work in and comply with the suggested 10%, which the commission would like to see, and to include that housing opportunity component with this development proposal. As to the text amendment, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to point out that it was just brought to our attention by your professional staff, town planner, that you would like to see some sort of protection, so to speak, that Evergreen Walk would be limited with the 2-to-1 ratio to this proposal. And we have been working with the town planner to come up with a formula that would provide that to the commission. You do have the cap with the units that are being proposed. And I would just like to remind the commission, as Mr. Lamson did, and you're very well aware of this, that with his own text amendment, you essentially have absolute discretion. I'm only aware of one case in the history of our state where the commission denied a text amendment, a zone change. I had it in Monroe, and on appeal, the court reversed and ordered it approved. And you can essentially, as I tell clients, if we come in with a text amendment or a zone change and the commission says denied because the moon's blue, there's no sense taking an appeal. It's like dealing with a variance and a legal hardship. So you do have that ultimate protection, but to accommodate and address the commission's concerns this evening and with this proposal, the idea was to come up with a formula, which I believe that we've been able to do, that would provide that assurance to the commission that with what's being proposed tonight, we can't come back, or Evergreen Walk would not be able to come back, or someone else, and utilize the 2-to-1 component if this proposal were to be approved as submitted to the commission. So I just was hoping to clarify that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just got a couple of notes over here. Alan, the open space.
Yes, sir.
Previously, it was mentioned that the open space requirement, 750 feet for each residential unit. And it's the applicant's intent to meet the requirement by providing a clubhouse and continuation of the trail system adjacent to the residential area. But didn't the applicant for Tempo already take credit for the trail system when it was originally installed? Now it's going to be modified, but I'm just wondering how much of that Tempo already did originally, because I've walked it before this application came in, and it was this loop was already completed. So I'm just wondering how much of the trail system you're actually changing.
He's going to let me do it. Okay. As they construct this development, places where they put the trail in are going to have to be modified because some of this development may put earth fill or something where the trail is. So part of their plan would be to maintain the continuity from the end of where we finished the trail at the south end through here back up to Tempo.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how much of that has to be done, because that would depend greatly on how they end up developing the site.
And I'm just curious, does that trail actually meet any disabled requirements that might be out there?
No, but I don't believe it all has to be.
Okay. And I'm just reading the multifamily residential use has been designed to meet the legal requirements for the disabled.
Right. So I think part of the trail is that people can use the trail. It's sort of like, same thing, disabled people have to be able to use portions of the building that provide them the services. They need a section of the trail that they can use.
Okay, and you do have that?
Well, I think that can happen in this phase.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I'm not gonna beat that other one to death. As the commission, we got a lot of information tonight. I would like to keep the public hearing open so that we may review the information and come back with any additional questions we might have. Does the applicant have any issue with that?
No, sir. I think you don't have a second meeting in December, correct? So the next meeting, I believe, is January 11th?
That is correct, January 11th. So
At 7 o'clock. I'd just like to state that for the record for compliance.
Okay.
But that's, and I believe that we would need an extension.
we would need an extension of
Under
time.
8.7D, and my client would consent to an extension through that date, and let's assume that if there's a snow day, it'll go through the next day to January 12th to accommodate the commission with
The
that request.
next day?
The 12th of January.
With that, I'm just wondering if that's a reasonable viability, because our meetings are always on Tuesday, and,
Yeah, we can't guarantee the room.
yeah.
I'm
So
just
maybe-
doing it so that if we need an extension to work it out, if there's a snowstorm or something, I can do that administratively the next day with the professional staff, so that we don't have any problems with a cancellation at the last minute on
Yep.
January 11th. That's all. I just always, as a courtesy, add the next day. That's all.
Okay, are we comfortable with that?
Yeah, what we'll do is if, in the event we do have to cancel it, we'll coordinate it a further extension if necessary.
And I appreciate you mentioned the possibility of a snow day. I mean, it's,
We all hope so someday.
yeah. Okay,
And-
okay.
And in closing, just thank you. I would like to just point out one thing with this, with the school-age children, with the SAC numbers, and I understand you had the prior application with the Geisler proposal, and Dr. Poland was here, Don was here.
I didn't
but-
mention a name.
I understand that. We all know, well, anyways, know Don well, and I just would like to point out that with Ms. Cochran's report, that the projection is for 6, potential students, potentially for the high school. And from what I understand, and I can't speak for the Board of Ed and won't, I'm not even insinuating, but it's my understanding that South Windsor has been somewhat unique in having pressures with the school systems. We're with the bell-shaped curve with the baby boomers, and I'm right at the end of it. Everywhere else, it's going down, obviously.
Yeah.
But that it's my understanding that there's been a lot of work with the grammar school, and they're looking at the high school. But again, I just would like to reiterate with this proposal that the projection is just 6 students, which are 6 students, but that, and again, this was an economic impact study that was done for the commission associated with the proposal. And based on those numbers of projected students and the projections, as we've heard with SLAM and with Mike Zuba, who used to be with Milona McBroom and went over to SLAM and did the updated study for your Board of Ed, apparently, that, our numbers, Ms. Cochran's numbers, have been consistent with those general numbers that have just been released, relative to, I think as of October of this year, actual enrollments in the school. So I was just hoping to point that out. Thank you for letting me do that, Mr. Chairman. And on behalf of the entire team, we appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this evening. Again, I would just like to reiterate, Evergreen Walk is really a unique product. I have privilege, I'm all over the state, and I just you don't see this anywhere else. This is somewhat unique. As we've heard from some of the representative with the retail and some of the commercial component, you have almost like a mini neighborhood at Evergreen Walk with the residential component, and walking, in a walkable neighborhood, being able to support the commercial that's there in restaurants and whatever. I know we're experiencing COVID, but you know what I'm saying, and I just think that I would just like to remind the commission of that. And we are kind of maxing out on the potential residential numbers, but everywhere you go from a planning perspective, having boots on the ground to support the commercial component in your town is always a plus. And again, that's why we spent the time doing the economic impact analysis for you. So again, on behalf of the entire team, thank you, and we all wish you and your families a healthy and enjoyable holiday season and New Year, and we'll see you in January.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. I had one more question for Alan.
Just couldn't let it go by, right?
I found one more note, Alan.
I'm sorry, Alan's left the building.
I heard he's semi-retired.
Yeah.
The detention basin, town engineer had mentioned that it is pretty close to the back of some of the units. Do you have a cure for that?
That will all be taken care of in the final design.
Okay. All right. All right. Commissioners, is there anything else that you'd like to mention tonight? Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I would just like to add two things. One is, I can't think of a better use of that particular piece of land. My question about the capacity of the schools is, my guess is that we have the capacity to absorb this number of students. If I hear from at the next meeting that we don't, that would be an issue for me, but I just need to be assured that we have the capacity to absorb that number of students.
Okay. Commissioner Bernstein?
Alan, one quick question. Sorry.
We don't see you that often, Alan.
Yeah, no, you see me too much.
You can do a lot of steps this way, right?
Yeah.
So assuming that we approve this application in the next couple of weeks, what's the build-out timeline on this project?
I'd leave that to Howard, I think.
Okay, Howard.
I believe Howard said the fourth quarter of 2022.
Yeah, so in answer to your question, Howard Rappaport, Continental Properties, for the record, the project will likely start in the fourth quarter of 2022, and we would be finished building by the fourth quarter of 2024. And
24?
Yeah, it's a 2-year build-out
Okay,
and stabilization period.
awesome.
Okay, the context for the question, and I'm guessing it's not going to be an issue, but again, thinking about the school issue.
Sure.
Right now, and I would project for the next 12 months, most school districts have a shortage of teachers. So on top of everything else, to add that to it and not being able to find substitute teachers, but I'm going to be positive and say if this thing moves forward by that point in time, shouldn't be an issue. So thank you.
Thank you. If I could answer the chairman's question about the number of home offices.
Yep.
Of the 165 dwelling units, 32 of them have the home office.
And what's the breakdown of that? Are they all one bedroom?
They're
or
all
two?
1 bedrooms, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and at that, Michelle, do we need a motion to continue?
Here's your motion to extend it to the January 11th meeting.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to extend this public hearing to our January meeting.
So moved.
Commissioner Viteri, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to extend it to our second our first meeting in January, January 11th. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. I believe that concludes our public hearings. And we'll go into our regular meeting. Our first item on our regular agenda is public participation. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on something that is not on our agenda? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move into our new business. Our first application, 21-41P, has been continued. Second one also, 21-42P. So now we are at our third one, application 21-43P, Charter Realty. So I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Karen Johnson. I'm with Charter Realty and Development here tonight on behalf of Promenade Shops at Evergreen Walk. Also joining me are Dave Gagnon from Langen Engineering and Chris McLean from Langen Engineering. Is this supposed to be projecting? Just work out our technical difficulties.
It's okay.
It's treated like a dual screen, so you just drag it.
Good, while I'm putting away there. Hundreds of papers. Oh, there it is.
We have two applications pending before you this evening, but we will address each one separately. The first application is for a change of use and minor modification to an existing condition. I'm going to have Dave go through, in both of these cases, in more detail, explain the site plan modifications, and then I will review the architectural changes. And I call this a minor modification because it's an existing building. We're removing a portion of the building in order to construct an outdoor playscape for the Goddard School, which is an early childhood education school ranging from approximately 6 weeks infants through 6 years old, effectively a pre-K early childhood education center. And this is taking place in the area that was previously Flatbread Pizza. So, Dave?
Thank you, Karen. For the record, my name is Dave Gagnon. I'm a civil engineer with Langen Engineering here representing the applicant. And I just want to go over really briefly. You have a printout of our slideshow in front of you and behind you. Just want to go over the existing conditions. The focus of our application is the promenade shops at Evergreen Walk. And there's an existing building, as Karen mentioned, building 600, and that is the focus of our application. And what we're looking to do as part of this proposal is to renovate that portion of the building. It's not the entire building, it's just the area highlighted here in yellow. So this is the existing conditions. Excuse me. To the east of the building, you have Cottonwood Lane. To the west of the building, you have Evergreen Way. And just to give you an idea of what the current master plan looks like, there's an image behind you and on the second page of your presentation. So again, we're focused here on building 600, which is highlighted here in red. The building is roughly 27,500 square feet, and we'll be renovating roughly 18,000 square feet of that building. Here's our proposed site plan, and there's not much as far as site work goes. The entire renovation for this proposed Goddard School will take place within the existing building footprint. What we will be doing is if you look in the northeast corner by Cottonwood Lane, we'll be converting this building space here into a play space for the children. So this will be fenced off play space accessible to the school, which would be just to the south. And if you follow kind of this dash line here, this will be the extents of our renovation, and the extent of the facade renovations here are shown in this dark black line. So that's really the extents of what we're doing from a site perspective. There will be a child drop-off at the current drop-off location off of Cottonwood. We're adding some landscaping. There's going to be a new canopy, so we're replacing the sidewalks under that canopy. But that's pretty much it. I mean, very minimal from a site perspective, really keeping the existing conditions and renovating the existing building space. We do have some elevations we could show you to give you an idea of what this building is going to look like. And I'll flip to the next slide, which is the last page in your presentation.
Thank you. As we previously noted, this is essentially where the Flatbread Pizza was located. Unfortunately, they were not able to stay within the center, although we tried very hard to get them to relocate to another space and expand their offerings. It really did not work out with their business plan. So what we're proposing, obviously, instead is the Goddard School. We will still have along Evergreen Way storefronts. So the previous plan, let me just go back to that. So this portion of the building will still be storefront, and that's illustrated here. So this will not change. Really what we're talking about are minor modifications in this area, signage for the Goddard School, and then along what might be considered to be the rear of the building, which is adjacent to the parking lot, a new entry element and a new main entry doorway.
Does that complete your presentation?
It does. Are there any questions?
Well, we'll get to those in a little while, but
Sure.
at this time, we'll turn to our town planner,
Sure.
our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. So this is a request for a site plan modification for the redevelopment construction. I had 12,000 square feet, but I'm hearing 18,000 square feet.
So what that number includes is the removal of a portion of the building where the playscape is.
With a place, okay,
Yeah.
so a total of 18, including the play area then?
Yes.
Okay. At 528 Evergreen Way in our Buckland Gateway Development Zone. As indicated, this is formerly the Flatbread as well as Charming Charlie building for all of us that's been around for a little while. So these are minor changes, including the removal of a portion of the building to make it into a play area, as well as a drop-off area on the back side of the building, which the back will be the front entrance for the school, and then some changes along the front along Evergreen Way to just bring it along, taking away the entrance that's currently out there and modifying it slightly. The applicant did go in front of design review with a proposal October 21st, and they reviewed it. We're satisfied with the proposal as presented. We did talk a little bit about the fencing. If anybody recalls, when we put the daycare in, we were looking for a fencing treatment of a little aesthetic so that it wasn't just a solid white fence. That is something that we've asked the applicant to address. There are regulated wetlands on Evergreen Walk site. This applicant did go in front of the Wetlands Commission on November 6th and received approval. There's no wetlands impact. They do have a bond of $2,000 for erosion compliance. Public Water and Sewer Services currently service this site. Water Pollution Control Authority will not be required for the change of use. However, talking with Tony Manfrey, Superintendent of Pollution Control, he would like to add signage to the bathroom similar to what we do with other daycares, just reminding not to flush wipes and things along those lines. So we'll coordinate with the applicant for that signage. If the site plan is approved, there are no other planning modifications to request. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As has been stated, the bulk of this modification is interior to the building, so I have no comments on this.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll open it up to commissioners. I'll turn to Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the Goddard School a national chain? I've not heard of them.
It's a company that was originally founded in Pennsylvania. I wouldn't call it a national chain. It is actually a franchise model, and in each case, obviously, the owner managers are the primary contacts. So there are several in the eastern Massachusetts area, and they're expanding into Connecticut.
So franchise model, so this will be kind of owner-operated?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's a little bit of a unique business for that spot, it seems to me. You feel good about that there?
You know, one of the issues I think that everyone can understand is how to drive traffic to a center. And when I say traffic, I don't necessarily mean new cars, new trips, but shoppers. And so in the case of a regular drop-off and pickup, particularly with some of the other uses that we've already received approval for, and ones that, you know, we hope to also bring to Evergreen Walk, we believe this is an excellent mix. I think you've probably seen it in a lot of centers. I think maybe the Stop and Shop one might be a similar one, where you're starting to see what may be considered less traditional shopping center uses that normally you would think of as primarily retail with a restaurant here and there. you're starting to see more uses mixed into traditional retail shopping centers. We've been doing it for about 10 years where we've added medical. That synergy of uses is very successful. Whether it's a model like an Evergreen Walk that Attorney Smith noted is unique in Connecticut, where you have a mixed-use center. We think that adding something like this is extremely beneficial to the center. We are very excited about it.
I would tend to agree. So when you talked about it's good for driving traffic, I kind of want to go there next because this commission has a lot of experience with daycare centers, and we always seem to focus on the safety of the children, which we should. So you talk about the drop-off as being behind the facility, which in my mind's eye is in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit here.
Okay.
So, so where we're looking at the drop-off is, again, I think Evergreen Walk is a unique model where you have the bulk of the retail entries in the front along Evergreen Way,
Right.
and the parking in the rear. I do think this is a very good aerial image. I don't know the date of it. I'm sorry. I wish I did, but I think it's indicative of what you find in this parking area. It's underutilized, as are the majority of the surface lots at the promenade shops. The new entry is here. There's already a drop-off, a bump in the curb for a drop-off zone. And so obviously one of the primary concerns of the operator is safety. And that's why we came up with this particular design to have the drop-off at this area of the building, have the outdoor play area segregated. And we had through the general plan conversation, we looked a lot at the internal movements here. And I think you were there for most of the conversations around the general plan and how we, really looked at the internal movements. Cottonwood is one of 3 north-south roadways. And so this area really is designated for just this use. This is the only use that has an exterior entrance, and what's left here is Ted, gosh, I hope I don't get this wrong. Yeah, this is Ted's. Ted's Montana Grill. So their main entry is in the front on the corner. Most of their customers are parking out here on Evergreen Way and on the side areas, and some overflow parking in the back. Primarily a later afternoon, early evening use versus an early morning, midday use.
So is there any kind of barriers or such that's set up in the back? I mean, I'm trying to envision car pulls up, mom pulls up, kid gets out, and you want to keep that child away from any moving traffic because you're in a parking lot. So.
Sure, maybe I could switch to another, more of the site plan and show you specifically, here we are, the drop-off zone. So this is actually, interestingly enough, this is an existing drop-off zone that is out there today. We don't have to make any modifications, and so this really was what we thought a perfect location for the main entry.
And is the nature of the business, is it lots of kids coming in at one time and lots of kids leaving at one time?
So it's less structured, obviously, than school hours. I don't have any children myself, but one of my scariest experiences was picking up my nieces and nephews at school. It's crazy. So I think anyone on the board who's had that experience as a parent or aunt or uncle or grandparent, it can be a little overwhelming. So that's a very specific start and stop to school hours. And I think schools understand that and they do it fairly well. This is a little different model where you're looking at, again, this is 6 weeks to 6 years. So it's infants. It's less structured in terms of time. So you're not going to get that, big rush. It'll be more throughout the morning and more throughout the midday for pickup.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Cavagnero.
All right, I have a few questions that I just want clarification for. So first off, Commissioner Bernstein touched upon this, so I'll have 3 questions that sort of relate to each other. I'll first start, or actually before that, I'll back up and I'll ask this question so I can get to the rest of them. What type of school are we expecting this to be? Like a daycare, like Mother Goose, for example, which is in South Windsor? I'm just trying to picture what this school may look like, because I know you mentioned there are other around New England.
So it's early childhood education.
Okay, so it's a little bit like Mother Goose. So my next question would be, how many kids are we anticipating for the school? I'm not sure if there's any projections yet.
The maximum that it's designed for, and that's at absolute full capacity, is about 150 students.
Okay. My next question is for traffic for the drop-off area. I'm not sure if there's projections for that as well yet. I know this is still early in the stages. How many cars are we expecting per hour? I remember back when I went to Mother Goose, for example, I remember it was like in a period of a moment. It wasn't sporadic throughout the day. I'm not sure how many cars we're going to be having per hour at the drop-off area.
So again, it's not a specific schedule like a traditional school, and so these are going to be more staggered.
Okay. And good segue. Speaking of schedule, I'm curious what the hours of operation for the school will be.
I don't have that specific information. I can certainly find out from the franchisee.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to do the math in my head with the hours of operation and the kids attending. I was just trying to see if I could do the simple math here.
Sure.
Other than that, that concludes all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. First of all, great questions, Commissioner Bernstein and Commissioner Cavagnero. So, could you just show us again how the play area is going to be screened from the outside? What's it going to look like from the outside?
So this outline here is existing building. And so this portion of the building is being removed. This is being retained because it's essentially where all the mechanical equipment is located. So that will continue to be the facade that you see today. And then this will be removed and replaced with a fence. Now, I don't have details yet on the exact fence. The only stipulation from the Goddard School is that they don't allow cedar fencing, so it's either metal or vinyl. And
Either metal or what?
Vinyl.
Uh-huh.
And Michelle, in her comments, noted that she would prefer, and as the commission has requested in other similar uses, a more decorative fence. And so, although I don't have a detail for that yet, if the commission was concerned about the aesthetics of the fence, we certainly could have that as a condition of approval, if appropriate, to come back with a design for the fence material.
I guess I would like either us or our architectural committee to weigh in on that aspect of it.
Sure.
Probably the architectural committee. Are we planning to try to approve this tonight, or?
I know we've got approval conditions.
Okay, so maybe we just put a condition in there on the.
Well, there's a 13 that's in italics that we would probably alter.
Okay, that's buried here somewhere. There it is.
That's it right there, Steve.
Okay. So I think you answered what the other retails are. All the other retail is the restaurant, or are there other retails? I'm a little concerned. It's like a lot of mall-type retail goes through from the front all the way to the back, and it looks like this is cut off quite short. I guess it's a marketing decision as much as anything, but other than the restaurant, there are, what, 2 or 3 storefronts left, and they're going to be fairly shallow. Do we have a kind of business that likes to get that kind of a site?
Sure. It's a good question. I think one of the issues with this building is it's excessively deep for retail uses. And obviously, in looking at laying this out, this is an unusual shape. So what we tried to do is figure out of the vacancies that we knew we were going to have, how can we still have viable retail in the front with visibility, because that's really key. As a retailer, I'd rather be a little wider and have more storefront and give up a little bit of depth. So we do think that these spaces are going to be very marketable. We are in discussions with tenants for taking over actually the entire space.
All right, thank you. That answers that question. Could you go back and just explain what the entry area actually going to look like? Looking at the drawing from the top, it was a little hard to understand what that is.
Sure. Okay. So the entry is, whoops, I'm sorry, flip past that. Here we go.
Well, perhaps go back on the top drawing, you know, the drawing from above. Just show me where the building will end. Okay, that's all at the dark line?
Sure, it's the dark line, yeah.
All right, so then what's in the area that's surrounded by the little dots?
Right here?
Yeah, no, where the entry is.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Did you see this one, Tristan?
So this is a new entry canopy that takes on the similar architecture of the front corner element, which is right here.
Okay.
So essentially what we tried to do is just, the architect did, is just carry over the same design of the building to create this entry canopy in the rear with the same architectural elements as the front corner. And then add,
so there's also apparently some landscaping there?
Add new windows, yes, and new, essentially a new storefront system and new windows. So these are new entry doorways, these are new windows. And then this area is that existing mechanical area that really contains all of the mechanical operations for that building. So we're not removing this section. And then over here is the play yard. And again, we don't have the specification yet for the fence treatment. So just imagine that this would be fence treatment, and then along this side, that would be, you know, new windows and doors into the play yard within the building.
But setback from the road, because that's the building you're talking about.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. I was looking into our regulation requiring EV parking spaces when you do a major renovation, and it looks like you're not planning to add 50 or more parking spaces, so you wouldn't be required. Of course, we'd love it to see Evergreen Walk add some more electric vehicle charging at some point, but it doesn't look like that's going to be required here.
So we will look at that at the next application. We'll discuss that we are including one in the proposed restaurant area, and when we do that, we'll also talk to the same operator to see if we can disperse some. There are some out there today. I'm sure you're familiar with them.
Right, yeah. All right, thank you. That's all of my questions.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter.
Real quick, 6 weeks to 6 years, right? So kindergartners are 5. Is it the 5 years old, right? To go to kindergarten?
4 or 5.
4 or 5, preschool. Do they leave the building on a bus and come back, or are buses involved at all?
No,
Because they stay there and they do all their classes there,
yes.
and they don't take advantage of the public schools?
If they're eligible for it, my understanding is that this would be in lieu of it until they go into
First
K or first grade. Yeah,
Okay. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be till 6, it could be till 4,
Right,
till
right.
5, okay. All right, but no school buses are planned for either outgoing or coming in?
none.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Viteri.
Yeah, most of the questions I had were already asked, but I did have one about the outdoor play area. I hadn't expected to see an outdoor access to it. I thought that the play area would basically be accessed from inside the building, as opposed to having kids coming right out into the parking area. So that door kind of surprised me.
You are correct in that it will be entirely accessible from inside the building, nothing exterior. So this window here is, this doorway here rather, is, let me go to this plan, is right here. So these triangles are doors. And then this is the play area. So only accessible from within the building.
Okay, so those dotted lines on the bottom, that's not what we're looking at in that other view. We're actually looking past that all the way to that back door.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. So that is, this is behind this facade right here.
Got it. Thank you very much. I'm good.
Okay, I had a couple questions about the architectural. Did this go to architectural design review?
Yes, it did.
And what were their comments?
They reviewed it, they were satisfied with the proposal. The only comment we had was about the fencing around the play area.
Okay.
Yep. We had 4 members there, yeah.
You're gonna have could you go back to the last slide you had with the dots? What do the dots represent? Are those bollards by chance or no?
No.
They're just dots on the print?
I'm just going to slide down here a little bit. So this is shown also on the grading and utility plan. So this is the extent of the new play area, the building to be demolished, and then this is a silt fence for during construction.
Right, so you do have a proposed fence,
Right here, this line.
the north line and the east line.
Yep.
But I'm just wondering if that's sufficient protection for, like, somebody driving a vehicle.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if someone comes along Cottonwood and doesn't make this turn
Or
and they,
comes along Cottonwood here and
yep,
just keeps going straight.
sure, we could certainly, that's an excellent point, Mr. Chairman. We can certainly add some bollards into that corner. I think obviously we'd want to place them
Probably
outside.
wherever you have an upright for the fence, I'm thinking, but,
Just leaving enough room for walking and not interfering in your walkway,
Yeah,
the only
Yeah.
real concern.
okay. All right, the renderings on your print A001, for the opposite side, the center core, they look a little bland. Is that really an accurate depiction of like your your storefront that faces the, what street is that, Michelle? Evergreen Way? Yeah. Is that an accurate depiction of it? I'm looking at the front facade street view, which is really your back facade.
So I think you're looking at the cover sheet. Mind if I just-
Yeah.
It is. So what we're proposing in this area is just a refinishing of the existing surface and then adding in a new color.
Now, that door, which might have been the location or similar location to where the old door was, but will that door be locked at all times?
It's not intended to be an entry door. I won't profess to say whether or not it will be locked or not, because my sense is it's probably required for egress purposes, for compliance with the building code.
Well, I'm sure there would probably be panic hardware on it, where somebody could get out if there was a fire.
A panic bar, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering.
But not accessible for entry from the street side, yes.
Right. Like if somebody was walking down, they saw the Goddard School and they wanted to go in and get information, maybe there'll be a little sign that says information, you can.
Go to the main entry.
Main
Sure.
entrance,
Yeah.
or look up this website, or have one of those little, like, what do they call those symbols that you scan and it pulls up menus,
Right.
you know? QR code, yeah. I'm a hammer and nails guy, you know? Other than that, so really, you're looking at putting a maximum of 150 kids in this location. And you're really looking at either Ted's Montana take over the rest of the retail, but it's not really an option for you to expand at this location? Or that would be up to the franchise?
You mean make this existing facility larger than what we're proposing today?
Correct.
Well, we would very much like to keep Ted's in place, and all indications are that they will be here for a while, which is good. I will say that obviously from this plan, you can see that we did have more square footage available to them, and this number, this 12,000 square feet is the maximum that they wanted to take. So this is what they think is suitable for their needs today.
Right, okay. Has staff reviewed the drop-off, and is there adequate queuing? How long is that?
As was stated, the drop-off exists. It looks to me like it can accommodate about 3 vehicles.
Could you speak up a little, Jeff, or maybe move a
Sorry,
little
it looks
closer?
like it can accommodate about 3 vehicles.
Is that adequate for the amount of students?
It could. It depends, as was stated, how they stage the drop-off and how they man the drop-off. You know, usually they have people there to greet the students and bring them into the schools, so they move the cars along.
Yeah.
Depends on how the school operates.
Yeah, and what's your procedure for the drop-off? Is there somebody who walks out to the car and escorts the kid in, and the parent never gets out and just go?
You know, I don't know that level of detail about the drop-off, so I don't want to say definitively, but that is most likely it. So.
I would just like to hear a plan of what the drop-off and pickup is, and for the applicant to either demonstrate that they're comfortable with the drop-off space currently. It just seems like there could be cars sitting out in the travel way if it's not done correctly or in
Yeah.
an efficient manner.
I will say that the franchisee has reviewed these plans in detail and developed their own floor plans and interior use plans based on this. And so there are a couple of options, and we've looked at this, I think, pretty carefully. It's difficult to say exactly how things are going to be done, but if a car is coming in from Cottonwood, it turns in here. We also discussed whether or not we would want to close off one of these lanes during the pickup and drop-off times. I think, again, what we see here is a tremendous amount of excess parking. And so, obviously, from their perspective, student safety, parent safety is primary. I think, again, if you would like to do a condition of approval, we can develop a narrative that talks specifically about how they will be doing that. Let me just click down here a little bit. I think the issue is that there are lots of options. And, whether or not all those options are suitable at all times, we may have some alternative approaches. The number that I gave you is the design capacity. So,
Right, the 150.
sure. And,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
So we can certainly provide, I think, again, if you're comfortable with a condition of approval, we can provide a drop-off plan that's implemented either at different stages of capacity and at different times of the day, just to give them a little bit of flexibility,
Yeah,
knowing
what I
again
would
that-
like to see is a drop-off plan
Sure.
and then the contingency plan
Sure.
in case drop-off plan A doesn't work. If they're gonna, maybe put a crosswalk and have somebody escort the kids or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, at least in my mind, and looking at this, early on, we would probably try to queue people down here. So if you do that, you have plenty of stacking room, you have plenty of room to pull into the drop-off zone and then quickly exit. And that way, you're not in conflict with what would be more internal through movements, and you still are preserving a significant amount of this parking area for employees, for patrons of the other businesses, and that might be the one of the easiest ways to do it.
Okay. I think that's all I have for questions. Michelle, you think we can do a,
Can I just,
okay. Commissioner Wagner?
yeah, I have very recent experience with dropping kids off at a facility in Texas of that age. And I think almost always mom or dad or grandpa will go in with the kid, park the car, take the kid out of the car, if they're able to walk at that stage, hold their hand, walk them in, say hello to the teacher. So it seems to me that dropping little kids of that age off at the curb is maybe less likely than what the parents are going to want. And it might be better to think about how the parking is striped. Is it easier to get, is it wide enough to get kids out of the car and maybe a walkway or something? But I just don't see people wanting to drop off kids of that age at the curb for a teacher or somebody to come out and escort them into the building.
Sure, and if that's, again, if that's the preference, or if that's the policy, I think we have plenty of opportunity for flexibility where we still have more than enough in terms of internal circulation. If that was the case, then we may, during certain drop-off and pickup periods, close this off, stripe it, do some, I think there's a lot of opportunity.
I mean, I'm thinking that the parents are going to want to use those parking places to park their car and escort the kid in.
Sure, and if that's the case, they would have easy access to these spaces, be able to get in and out of this parking area on Cottonwood, and then potentially during drop-off have this closed off so there's no cars coming through here. So I think there's a lot of options, basically, is what I'm saying. I think this is one of the reasons why we like them in this location, because there's flexibility.
So anyway, I have very positive feelings about this project.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, great, maybe you'll help form a approval condition to move it forward. Commissioners, any other questions, comments? Commissioner Bernstein.
Quick question. Is there any reason that the franchisee wasn't able to be here?
So we've been working with them for several months. They're still in the very early stages, and to be perfectly frank with you, we are this close to a lease, but we don't have a lease. I probably said to you before that I would never discuss a tenant without an executed lease, and I'm proving myself wrong on this one, because we are trying now to schedule all of our build-outs. We obviously, are relocating both Socorro and Old Navy and intend to start construction on Whole Foods in the spring once we are able to relocate. So what we're trying to do is move this process forward so that when they are ready and we have their architect's plans, which we don't have them yet, that we will have our local approvals, we will find a general contractor and be ready to go. So
Very fair. Thank you.
that's the only reason, and I know for the last almost a year, I've been very transparent about this process. That is absolutely the reason.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If you're comfortable. Okay, to be reviewed by town staff or the commission? Which one do you? Okay.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion.
Great.
That we approve application 21-43P. This is the Goddard School. Standard approval conditions 1 through 11. Number 3 is the application is subject to the conditions of approval of the Inland Wetlands Agency, Conservation Commission, including bonds in the amount of $2,000 to ensure compliance with the erosion and sediment control measures. Then standard conditions down through number 11. Number 12, engineering comments dated 12/14/21 shall be incorporated into the final plan. 13, the fencing around the outside play area shall be decorative in nature and subject to staff approval. And then number 14, the one we're adding, is to provide a drop-off plan at different stages of capacity and timing with a contingency plan if it's just not working out, or if we have to stripe, or if we have to, however the parents want to drop off, and we would allow the town staff to approve that.
Okay.
I thought there was some discussion of a bollards situation.
And number 15, bollards shall be added at the play area in case of a runaway car or something.
Maybe on the bollards, we add in the northeast corner of the play area.
Okay.
Yeah.
In front of the fenced area of the northeast side.
Okay.
And I'll make that subject to staff approval also.
Subject to staff approval.
Okay, I'll read it one more time.
Sure.
Number 15, ballard shall be placed in the northeast side in front of the fenced area, subject to staff approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second, Commissioners?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none. Oh, I see lights.
He's getting ready to say yes.
Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimous. Okay, let's see.
Thank you.
We have application 44P,
I approve.
Chata, for construction of the restaurant.
Okay, thank you.
These, I don't get too confused.
The floor is yours.
Thank you.
You're on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. My name is Karen Johnson. I'm with Charter Realty and Development, here tonight on behalf of the Promenade Shops at Evergreen Walk. We have another what we consider to be a minor site plan modification, and I say minor because this area, this project site, was contemplated in the original general plan of development for the Promenade Shops, for an 8,475 square foot building. And at the time, it was not specific as to retail, restaurant, et cetera, but because of the standalone nature, it was contemplated to be a restaurant. And so at this point, we're proposing a much smaller restaurant, a 3,200 square foot restaurant, and bringing Shake Shack to South Windsor, which we are very excited about. To have a restaurant of this caliber expanding and coming to Evergreen Walk is very exciting for all of us, and we hope exciting for you as well. We've, as I'm sure Michelle will also note in her comments, did receive very, very favorable comments from the Architectural and Design Review Committee. I'm going to, again, turn it over to Dave Gagnon first to talk about the site-specific elements of this project, and then I will go over the architecture. Dave?
Thank you, Karen. For the record, again, my name is Dave Gagnon. I'm a professional civil engineer with Langen Engineering. And I'll just run through really briefly the existing conditions as Karen mentioned. The focus of our site is this yellow dashed line. The limits of our project are just under an acre. It's 0.7 acres. We're bound by, to the west access drive. To the north of our site is Hemlock Avenue, and to the east of our site is Evergreen Way. And to the south of our site, you'll see a wooded area with the stream. So there are some wetlands and some relatively steep slopes, which we'll not be touching as part of this project. So that's an aerial of the existing conditions, and I'll just want to show you really briefly the current master plan. And I would like to mention as well that this site is currently, there's a graded flat kind of pad here, and there are 20 existing parking spots with access to the west access drive. The next slide, this is an image from the current master plan, and I have highlighted here in orange what's currently approved as part of that master plan. And as Karen mentioned, there is a building approved right here, and this is an 8,475 square foot building approved in the master plan with parking on the west side with 20 parking spaces. In our proposed project, we will stay within the limits of that currently approved development. And here's a rendering of our proposed plan. And what we're looking at here, to the north here is Hemlock Avenue, just to get us oriented. So we're proposing a 3,200 square foot restaurant. You could see that in white here. There will be an outdoor seating area directly to the northwest, covered with a pergola in this area. We're providing access to the restaurant from the west access drive, which is over here. So this would be full access in and out. We do have 30 parking spots. And I will note that in our parking lot, we do have a proposed EV charging station. It's difficult to see on this plan. I could show you in the next plan, but there will be an EV parking spot in this area here. As part of our development, we're providing new lighting, new landscaping. There will be a pickup window, and this is different from a drive-through. Essentially how this operation will work is you'll have an app, you place your order, and then you'll be notified when your food is ready, and you'll basically drive up to the pickup window and you'll leave. So this is the access drive one way for the pickup window, and you'd exit here onto Evergreen Way. A few other features to note is from a stormwater perspective, we're adding a rain garden right here. So this will help with water quality and runoff from the site. We are also proposing some porous asphalt to help with water quality. From a pedestrian circulation standpoint, there will be sidewalks on 3 sides of the building. You can see here, around the building, on every side except for where that pickup window would be. And there's an existing sidewalk on the south side of Hemlock. It terminates right here. We will be extending that to the end. And it's difficult to see in this aerial, but there is a crosswalk that'll access the new apartments west of our property. And I'll just flip to our site plan. That just shows you, oops, that doesn't look good. Okay, so there's not, this is in your packet. This is really just our detailed site plan. If there's any specific questions, feel free to ask me. I could answer them, but it's all shown in our aerial. Okay, and with that, I'll pass it off to Karen to talk about the architecture.
Thank you, Dave. So last February, the entire team from Shake Shack came out to this site to look at it, and much like Whole Foods, their primary concern was visibility from Buckland. And we spent a lot of time working with them on this site plan, many months, actually. This is a difficult site to develop for a small footprint because of some of the constraints. Obviously, you're surrounded by roadways, but you also have bridge abutment right off of Evergreen Way. You have a major electrical transformer on the site, as well as wetlands and a top of slope that cannot be moved. I think they came up with an excellent design, and we also shared with them the Whole Foods architectural plans so that they could certainly not replicate what they were proposing, but in some ways tie into it. And so I think in particular the metals and the glass and the color palette are consistent with the Whole Foods plan, but this is uniquely a Shake Shack designed for this location. They do not have prototypes. They do a different design for each location. There's excellent use of hardy board, fluted concrete, some porcelain tiles that are a matte color, as well as the composite black panels in the glazing. So what is, of course, most unique, I think, is the outdoor seating area. And you can see, this is from the front, but again, let me just go, whoops, I'm sorry, go back a little bit. The outdoor seating area includes lighting and also includes heaters, as well as these large concrete planters all around the perimeter to provide more of a private space in there, even though it's adjacent to the parking lot. One of the challenges, again, as I noted, is visibility. So we prepared, using the same consultant that we used for Whole Foods rendered plans, to understand what it looks like from Buckland. What I don't think I realized when we first started working at Evergreen Walk was the sensitivity of rooftop equipment and the visibility of that. I've become very aware of that thanks to Michelle. And so what we did is we took this rendered view. This is an existing condition, obviously. This is an actual photograph. And then we took, again, using the same 3D model to show what the proposed building will look like. This is the second rendered view that we did because the first rendered view showed visibility of the rooftop all along this parapet. So when we sent that back to the architects, they increased the height of this parapet, and all of the rooftop equipment associated with the kitchen is not visible from Buckland Road.
Does that complete your presentation?
Well, unless you have, and maybe you'll have questions later, Dave referenced the app pickup window. It's something that is unique to Shake Shack, and I think this is a good view of looking at the Panera. Shake Shack's menu does not lend itself to a traditional drive-through concept because their food prep time is much longer. And so this is, the app pickup window is something that came from them out of COVID, and it is exactly what it sounds like. I've tried it at one of their locations near where I live, and it's very specific. You place your order, it tells you how long it's going to take, and it tells you when it's ready. So some of the traditional concerns that you have related to drive-throughs just don't exist. So.
Okay.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Yep. At this time, we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Leip.
Thank you. So this is a request for site plan approval for approximately 3,200 square foot restaurant, associated outside seating, property located at 601 Evergreen Way, Buckland Road, Gateway Development Zone. For those that have been around a long time, this was actually the Bonefish site that was approved for a restaurant many years ago. Was never constructed on the site, so I'm glad to see a restaurant back at that site. As indicated, access will be from the west access road, basically behind the building off of Hemlock Avenue. The one-way drive will come out to Evergreen Way, and that will be directly across from the entrance to the parking lot, the spare parking lot there. Those two are lined up. They've met the parking requirements, all the zoning requirements. We do have one EV charger shown on site as required. Lighting, it would be 25-foot high lighting with full cutoff, similar to other lighting in the shops area. They will have some bollard lighting along the site drive. They're showing some landscaping along the site frontages, no visible rooftop equipment. We have a dumpster on a concrete pad. This was reviewed by Design Review. They did have a favorable recommendation. Karen didn't mention it tonight, but this is similar to Whole Foods where you will have a mural that you're proposing along the Evergreen Way. And similar with the approval for Whole Foods, we suggest they return with the design of the mural before it's put onto the building. They are showing building signage along Evergreen Way, Hemlock, and along the west access frontages. Those sign sizes will be controlled through the regulations. There are regular wetlands on site. They did receive wetlands approval on November 6th, requiring a bond of $15,000 for erosion sedimentation and also for the establishment of wetlands mitigation plantings. The bond will be required to be held for 2 years for that. Public water is available on Hemlock Ave. Water Pollution Control Authority will be required for the sewer connection. This approval is part of the larger OSTA approval for the whole development, so there's no special OSTA approval needed at this point. There's two things that we would ask the applicant to consider. The sidewalk network coming up from the west, looking for a connection from the public sidewalk into the site before you get right about the parking lot area, like in the area of the rain garden, maybe something in that area, just so people don't have to walk all the way up, because you know they will walk across your parking lot if they want to get there. Then the second thing, at the entrance into the one-way pickup window, some kind of treatment to differentiate it, maybe stamped concrete or something there, again, to just kind of call it out as a different location. People, maybe won't go that way if they're not going to pick up something and use it as an exit. So those would be the two comments we'd be looking for the applicant to address. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. I'd like to see the sight line looking south from the exit lane onto Evergreen Way. As Karen mentioned, there is a retaining wall for the bridge there that limits the sight line somewhat. So I'd like to see that and know that that's adequate for traffic exiting. Ask a question about how emergency vehicles would access the site. Can they get in and around the parking lot adequately? There's an existing catch basin on Evergreen Way that needs to be replaced with a CL or flat top. And there's an existing sewer lateral on the site that was put in when Evergreen Walk was built that needs to be inspected and cleaned before it is used to make sure it can be used for this building. And lastly, WPCA review and approval is required for this site plan.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Viteri.
Just one question. What's the proposed hours of operation?
You stumped me again. I don't have it. They do not serve breakfast. They serve lunch and dinner. But it's I'm not sure if it's a 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, or 9 o'clock in terms of hours of operation.
And then close at?
That's what I mean. In the evening, 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. Yeah.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter.
No questions.
Commissioner Wagner.
So I guess we're not trying to restrict the hours of operation or make them commit to hours of operation. Okay. I noticed, and thank you for including an EV charging station. Our table 6410B, as in Bravo, if you have one EV space, it has to be van accessible, but not restricted to handicap parking. The idea is that someone who needs that kind of parking can use the space, but we don't want to tie it up as the only people who can use it would be ADA, people who need ADA. The other thought is it would be awfully nice if that space was closer to the building, because one of the ideas with EV charging is to make it convenient. It looks like you've put it as far away as you can from the door. So it doesn't have to be right at the door, but it ought to be at a more convenient location. Like, take that same row and move it closer to the building. Everybody's learning how to do this EV charging, and from our point of view, we're also trying to understand what people have trouble with so we can make any adjustments we need to make in the future.
Steve, would space number 8 be adequate?
Yeah, that would be great. Or the one at right angles to it, yeah.
Yeah. On your CS 101 drawing, there's a space 8 that, if you could, to get it on the record, we need you at the microphone. Thank you.
We'll take a look at that front row. What we were just discussing, is there enough to put a van space adjacent to one of the existing van spaces? So we could look at where 8 is, or next to the van space, for sure, yeah.
That'd be great.
Actually, it might be easier that way because the electrical is going to be closer to the building, so we'll look at that.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Cavagnero.
Yeah, I have a few questions. So the first one, I'm just going to ask, because I didn't see it here. It's a standard question. Do you know how many jobs will be created with this, like, permanently? I'm thinking, like, maybe, like, 30-ish. I'm not sure how many people it takes to operate a Shake Shack. I'm just thinking generally through fast food places, through my experiences, and how many people have worked at fast food places before.
Sure. I want to make the distinction that this is considered a fast casual, which is very different than a fast food restaurant. And they are primarily part-time with a handful of full-time employees.
So no...
Which ranges from seasonal peaks and...
Okay, so you don't have a set number of how many people this would employ?
No.
Okay. My next question is really from personal experience. I'm looking on the map here. Having to used to work at a restaurant before, I see that garbage, trash dump, how do I put it? The dumpster at the top right corner.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep losing it and then it comes back.
No, that's okay.
So sorry about that.
I see how it's not close to the building. Would it be possible to slide down? It's on the top right of the parking lot. Is it possible to slide that down towards the bottom, closer to the restaurant? Because I cite some safety concerns, because I'm looking at it and it would require workers at the end of every night to cross the parking lot. Sometimes if it's in the winter, the parking lot, there's black ice, it's just hard to navigate. I see there's a sidewalk that leads right to the corner on the bottom right-hand side of the parking lot, and I'd just say it'd be safer, and I don't want to see anyone get hurt.
Sure.
I've had my fair share of experiences crossing parking lots to the dumpster. I'd rather just like to see that dumpster closer to the restaurant.
So the location of this was very a part of a lot of conversations, and this is the final location that we thought offered the most opportunity for screening and operationally was acceptable to Shake Shack. We didn't want it in the front because we didn't want it to be as visible from Hemlock, and so in this corner we have more of an opportunity for screening around it. And it's accessible. One of the difficulties, I'm sure you understand, is making sure that it's accessible for trucks, for emptying, and so that's partly why this series of sidewalks is here, so that it is a clear path from the kitchen out. And this is where they wanted it. So.
Okay. My last two questions are on the modifications I looked at. So I'll start out with modification 15. I see it notes a bike rack. I'm not sure if it's on what we've received. Where would the bike rack go? I'm just curious.
So I think what you're referring to are proposed conditions of approval, which I haven't seen. However, I think we can find a location for a bike rack here. That's easy.
Okay. My apologies
I'm
on that.
sorry. He's got it. He's
It
got
is
it.
shown there.
He's already got it. It's right here.
Yeah.
It's very small.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see that. My apologies.
Just a one thing, Dave. It's just a one U with 2 bikes. Yeah. Okay.
All right. And my last question, I think, would be for our town planner, Michelle Lipe, on modification 16, sort of more clarity on what type of advertising you're talking about. Like, for example, Shake Shack wouldn't be able to put like a poster advertising one of their shakes, for example. I'm just using a scenario. They wouldn't be able to do that and put it like on their mural, for example?
Yeah, that was the intent, was not to have the mural be for advertising of product,
Okay.
but more for art.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Bernstein.
Are these company-owned or is this franchised?
These are company owned.
Company-owned, okay. And on the, I understand how the drive-through works, or it's not a drive-through, it's a pickup. So there wouldn't be any queuing, there wouldn't be any backup. You agree with that?
I do.
Yeah. So,
I do, and just because they're relatively new, I wanted to observe them, and so I have, and that's been their experience with it so far. It's, I think for Shake Shack, this is little over a year old, and that has been their experience. It's we're all learning new ways of doing things, and frankly, I find the app very helpful.
yeah, and it makes sense. I know there's a lot of restaurants that are using apps to, make appointments. It's the only way you can do it in some cases, so that makes sense. So Karen, what I will say to you is there's a chance that I myself will keep this thing in business. Thank you.
Okay.
Leave some for the
Thank
rest
you.
of us.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernstein. Should you recuse yourself because you may have a conflict?
I do have some concerns and okay, I do see a bollard at each handicap space. The outdoor dining, any idea what those planters are made out of? Are they?
They're concrete.
Okay, so they seem adequate. Just safety-wise.
I think I'll also note, and this was a comment and a question at the Architectural and Design Review, because the rendered views from Shake Shack did not incorporate the landscape design. But what you can see here is this is a curb in addition to a separation distance from the parking space, concrete curb, vertical curb, then space, then the concrete planters.
Yeah, and from past experience, we had the concrete curb and we had the curb stops in front of it. And somebody actually used that to catapult themselves up onto the concrete sidewalk, and they went through a storefront.
Yeah.
So we just, to cure that one, we put a bollard there. Commissioner Wagner, would you make a motion to extend the meeting?
I move we extend the meeting to 9:45.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We had asked for a treatment, or the Director of Planning did, stamped concrete or other treatment to be added to the access drive for pickup window. Any issue with that?
None. We reviewed all of the comments from
Okay.
both Jeff and Michelle. We have no issues with any of them.
Okay. Michelle, is there anything else we haven't mentioned that we should?
No, just the sidewalk and the treatment were the only two things I was
Okay.
looking for. Jeff had a couple of minor things.
Okay. So, commissioners, a motion would be in order if,
Okay, I'll make a motion. I move we approve application 21-44P, Evergreen Walk Restaurant. Conditions 1 through 12 are standard conditions. Number 3, this application is subject to the conditions of approval of the Inland Wetlands Agency Conservation Commission, including bonds in the amount of $15,000 to ensure compliance with the erosion and sediment control measures and successful establishment of the mitigation plantings to be held 2 years. And condition number 4, a landscape bond in the amount of $5,000 is required and must be submitted prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy if work is not completed. And then these are the Additional conditions, condition 13, stamped concrete or other treatment be added to the access drive for the pickup window. 14, engineering comments dated 12/14/21 shall be incorporated into the final plans. 15, in accordance with section 6.7.3.1A, a bike rack shall be provided. 16, the mural design is for art purposes only. No advertising is allowed. The applicant shall return to the commission with the details of the final design and materials to be used. 17, a sidewalk connection shall be added from the existing sidewalk along Hamlet Drive into the site. And 18, in accordance with section 6.4.10, the EV charging space should be van accessible but not handicap restricted and closer to the building.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Good
Thank
luck.
you so much. I just would like to say thank you for the last year of very thoughtful and professional experiences. I've been doing this for, I hesitate to say, over 30 years, and I have never dealt with a group like you and like the staff here. It has just been, I mean, every time I come in, I try to be prepared, and I always get a handful of questions that I'm not prepared for. So you keep me on my toes, but more importantly, I think you represent this community in probably one of the most professional manners I've ever encountered with a volunteer group. So I just wanted to say thank you for making 2021 a great year for Evergreen Walk, and I can't wait till we start construction on all these projects next year. So thank you again, and happy holidays.
Thank you. Okay. So you're not presenting the monument sign, are you? Or are you?
Yes. I didn't see the agenda. Yes.
Okay. So that's.
It's not on my
next.
PowerPoint. It's not on Dave's PowerPoint. So yes, I'll stick around.
Okay.
Get everything I just said.
Yeah, I thought there
You
were.
should have received the change order request with the diagram for the signage changes for Evergreen Walk in your packet, right?
Yeah, there were a couple. Oh, okay, that's on that one. Trying to see where that is. Wonder if I put it. No,
That's
it
what
is.
you're looking at, yep.
I'm just looking for it. I'll just buzz through real quick. I should find it.
So we submitted a change order. I should start again. Good evening. My name is Karen Johnson. I'm with Charter Realty and Development here representing, in this case, Evergreen Walk Master Association. There are two signs depicted in this rendering. Our change order request is only for sign B, not for sign A. Sign B will go in the exact same location as the existing monument signs that are out there today. My understanding is that when the Evergreen Walk was originally approved, it could only be an identification sign, but since then there have been different interpretations by the commission that tenant names are allowed to go on those signs. Over the years, Evergreen Walk Master Association has agreed to grant certain unit owners placement on a monument sign, and so some of this will be to cover some of the tenants within the shops at Evergreen Walk, and some will be to provide the sign placement commitments that have been made over the years by the Master Association. And so the tenant tenant, typical sign B shows what those will look like and the panels. So that's on sheet 5, and at Tamarack, excuse me, and sheet 6 is the Hemlock entrance. We looked at the larger monument signs of Evergreen Walk. I don't believe that these are allowed by zoning. And so what we're proposing is just a replacement of the existing monument signs in the same locations where they're located today.
Okay, and these are just the tenant A signs?
It says tenant A on the top panel, and then when you look at the details, it's identified as
B1, B2?
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Yep.
And the B locations will tell you where they're located.
Okay.
And so there is a difference between the Tamarack signs in that it's 2 tenants at the bottom versus the Hemlock signs, which are 3 tenants on the bottom based on the commitments that the Master Association made for signs. That's the only difference between the 2 of them.
Okay. Okay, well, at this time, I'm going to turn to our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
So this is request similar to what we've had kind of morphed with Evergreen Walk from the Evergreen Walk signage. The history is we allowed the tempo to go on, and you allowed for Cambria Suites to go on. Across the street with the gateway, we approved signage that allows for 4 tenant names. So this is kind of along those same lines. The only thing I can't tell, because it's shown as a white panel, we don't allow internally white unless they just are cut-through letters, so we may need to see a little more detail on the signage as far as materials and things like that.
Okay, we'll turn to our Town Engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no comments on the sign.
Okay, so I'll turn to Commissioners. Anybody have anything? Commissioner Viteri, Commissioner Dexter, Commissioner Wagner, Commissioner Cavanaugh, Bernstein. So we're just looking at the B1, B2, B3, B4, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a problem with these. We allowed them across the street for the other development. Motion to approve the change order would be in order.
I move we approve the change order for signs as presented at Evergreen Walk.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay. Could you just repeat all those nice comments again? And I'm only kidding.
So
Thank
for the
you.
record, I think we're probably finished for quite a while here. I don't know that we have any major changes coming up, but yeah, I meant what I said. It's not like I'm trying to butter you guys up for the next thing that we have coming in here. It's been a great experience. So thank you.
Okay.
And I've worked, by the way, all up and down the East Coast. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commission, I would ask if we could extend the meeting for up to 15 minutes more, just so we can knock a few more things.
I move we extend the meeting to 10 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, Michelle, are you presenting the CGS referral?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So For the commission, you do have an aerial of the map. For some of you members that were on several years ago, the town planning and zoning did approve this subdivision. It was a subdivision in East Windsor, and the open space was in South Windsor. So it was called West River Farms, which I do have the original plans if anybody wants to see them. What I'm handing out to you now is kind of the open space and the map that we approved. It shows the easements on there. And I guess what I'm illustrating on that easement there is the town of East Windsor would have an easement to the detention basin and responsible for it on this property because it does take drainage from an East Windsor subdivision, okay?
Yep.
So this was open space then again that the town reviewed as part of that project. It was supposed to go to the East Windsor Scouts as part of the original conveyance. And what was in that was if the Scouts wanted to get rid of it, East Windsor had a first right of refusal on the property. East Windsor has chosen not to execute that first right of refusal, and that's why the town of South Windsor has now gotten into the mix on this. It was reviewed by the Open Space Task Force. They did unanimously endorse this purchase. What I would say, if you look at your plan of conservation development, we do identify greenway areas, future and existing greenways. This property does abut up to that because this would provide access to the Scantic River. So that is one of the advantages of this, is there is an existing parking lot that has been created at the bottom of the slope there, and you would have access to the river. We did receive a comment coming in through the online submission from Roy Norman, asking several questions about that. I'd be glad to read them into the record and give you what answers I have. What I would let the commission know about this process, especially for some of our newer members, is this is a referral from the town council to the commission. Anytime the town is moving forward with a purchase of land, it gets referred to the Planning and Zoning Commission to look at it and to give a recommendation, either a favorable recommendation or not a favorable recommendation on the purchase, by reviewing your planning document and how this fits into your plan. If for some reason you did an unfavorable recommendation, then the town council would have to move forward with a 2/3 majority to move forward with a purchase. One of the other things that you should be aware of is one of the other pieces that we'll go through is the town council will go through a public hearing process for any purchase of open space using bond money. It does require a public hearing. So some of the questions that Mr. Norman submitted may be more appropriate for the town council. And maybe some things that he wants to bring up to the public hearing for them. But I'd be glad to read them in and answer what I can from what I know of them. So let me just get them in front of me real quickly here. Sorry about that, I had them. Guys, I have too much paper, sorry about this.
I'll just note for the commission, you see like the drainage swale that's here. If you went like a quarter to a half a mile south of that, you would get to the Aldi's distribution center, okay? Just to try and give you some idea of where this is located.
Okay, I apologize, I found them. Okay, so why is the town of South Windsor developing a park that will primarily benefit East Windsor? I know our Park and Recreation Commission folks are very excited about this because I think it would benefit South Windsor as well as potentially East Windsor. So I guess that's a question for someone to debate. East Windsor can own a park in South Windsor. Take example, Elizabeth Park or Batterson's Park. I guess I think East Windsor's chosen not to exercise the right of purchasing this. Why is this Scout Youth Hall unloading the property? My understanding is the organization has a lot of elderly folks and they just don't feel they have the ability to manage the property moving forward. Why isn't East Windsor taking over? I don't know. I don't think the town manager, when I asked him that question, I don't think he had a real answer for that on that one. Will East Windsor help with policing the park? My understanding is if you called 911 from within the park, South Windsor Police Department would respond. So it would be South Windsor Police that would respond at this location. Access to the property for South Windsor is through the town of East Windsor. It is through Scantic Road, which is in East Windsor, and then it does come down into South Windsor, so that is true. Shank Road is a poorly maintained one-lane road. It ends at the town line. You have to cross the parking lot of South Windsor, use autos to get to a long, one-lane, overgrown, single-lane gravel driveway. I don't believe that's the main access into the property. I think there's another access into it. The town could try to buy one or more lots. I don't think that's the town's interest in buying any more lots for the access. There's a large sedimentation basin in the property leading down to the river. Who owns and maintains this facility? As on the plans I presented you tonight, that is a drainage easement in favor of the town of East Windsor, and they would be responsible for the maintenance of the shaded areas in that. It supports the development East Windsor. That's their drainage going down and into the, and that's already, for the most part, completed. We are currently still holding a bond on some improvements for that open space area for some mitigation measures they need to do for a wetlands bond. So that is certainly something we would want to have completed before we purchase the property. The main attraction supposedly for South Windsor is gain access to the Scannick River. Apparently, John Calder from Parks and Grounds has gone out there, and there's minor modifications that would have to be made to be able to access to get a canoe down into the river fairly easily. So that would be something the town would be interested in doing to be able to get access to the river. Site primarily provides a pullout for upstream Scannick River Greenway. And again, yes, the idea is to provide some access for people to be able to get onto the Scannick with canoes. And again, he just says these are just some thoughts to consider.
Okay, thank you. This drawing versus this drawing, it looks like the borders are different, and maybe I'm viewing it wrong. Where is?
This is the detention basin. That's this area right here.
Okay.
Okay. So this is your coming down.
Okay, so this point is like off the map here, right here.
Correct.
Right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is all housing?
This is all housing that was approved up in East Windsor.
Which would be?
Yeah, so this is an older aerial, yeah.
Okay.
This,
And this is the town line right now?
correct.
Okay, so the blue line to the north is basically the town line. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, I'm good with that. Yep, thank you. Okay, commissioners, it's an 8-24 referral, so it's really favorable or unfavorable. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments? Commissioner Bernstein?
Is this the thing that we're buying for $1, but we're incurring a lot of liabilities?
$1 and I believe $2,000 in lawyers' fees. But, go ahead, Michelle.
I don't know the answer to that.
Apparently Bart does.
That's,
So that we're not supposed to take that into consideration, or that's irrelevant to us, is that? Because I'm, on something like this, I'm kind of unclear where our purview starts and stops. So if we're going to give a recommendation, it's simply on the piece of land, irrelevant of the financial arrangement or deal or anything else. Is that accurate?
the 8-24 referral is very vague in what our,
Yeah, how you're reviewing it. I mean, you're looking at it based on your planning principles, your plan of conservation development. If it's an area that you've targeted for open space purchases, it doesn't mean that, you know, if, just because it's in your plan, you have to agree with it if you think it would cost way too much to develop. I mean, I think you can bring all sorts of things into your consideration.
yeah, and, you know, maybe weigh it somewhat. Of course, anything that you get, any land, there's always a certain amount of liability. But I think, you know, with the possibility of additional places for our residents to do recreation, it's hard to say. Are you all set, Paul? Or
Yeah. All I know is in the history of mankind, more people have died in search of the acquisition of territory. So if the choice is to take the land or not, I don't know why we wouldn't. but that's, I guess, what we're going to vote on.
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I got to say that we, and I'm in South Windsor Walk on Wheelways, which is the subcommittee of the Parks and Rec Commission, have been drooling over this site for years. It's a recreational opportunity. If we can find some grant money, we'll actually try to install a handicapped accessible canoe launch, which is quite a thing to look at. But the idea would be someone who could get out of a wheelchair, get into a boat, have the boat lowered into the water, this kind of thing. Again, that's not in this thing, but it's you know, with the right grant, we might be able to even provide that kind of service here. It's a way to get from a place where you can launch a canoe out into the Connecticut River. There may be some issues with clearing dead trees and so on, but I think this is a great thing. And I'd be willing to go ahead with a motion if no one else has a wish to speak.
Commissioner Dexter?
I just want to go on record, similar to what Paul said, and say I have some concerns about liability. Police response is going to be up to South Windsor. I think it's a place where people may go to do more than canoeing, and so I just think we should keep our eyes open. Anything for $1 is just what it sounds like. It's for $1.
Yeah. Michelle, this land, I just want to be clear. Everything we're getting, I believe, is South Windsor land, correct?
That's correct. It's in South Windsor.
Okay. Yeah. The access to the road, I don't know if you've ever, I don't think you've been to the junkyard down here. What's the name of the street it's off of? Shank Road, yeah. And I shouldn't say junkyard, it's a used auto parts. I've been there a couple times, pick it up like a headlight or, you know, this or that. And the road, it's Scantic Road, and then Shank Road is out off of that. So that access is through East Windsor.
Okay, so we're not paying for the river access as much as the road in. I mean,
no, the road in is in East Windsor. It's just, it is the river access, the river property.
Is South Windsor.
Yes.
So why haven't we done anything with it up till now?
Because we didn't own it, the Scouts owned it. They had plans years ago, they came before us to possibly make it a recreational place for them. But as Michelle said, I think they're an older group, and that time has passed, you know?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So commissioners, what's your feeling? Are we in favor?
I move we forward a favorable recommendation to the town council on the purchase of property located at 220 Scantic Road.
Okay. Is everybody in agreement? Okay. Okay, we have our favorable, do you need a motion for that, or? Oh, okay, I apologize, Steve.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of giving a favorable recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Michelle, did you have one more thing?
Yeah, actually, apologize. I have three things I want to hand out to you tonight. One of them goes back to the accessory apartment regulation we reviewed in September and the idea of the opt-out provision. So I've got them on one document that I'm going to hand out to you to take with you. I also have a document related to hybrid use marijuana dispensary to start that discussion. So I put together regulations related to that. And then the third document I have is related to the commercial industrial use table. In this document, the other two are ready to, I think, move on to CROG and maybe look to schedule a public hearing. This one here takes a look at two different uses, the warehouse distribution facilities, looking to modify those to a special exception use, and also the discussion of having special criteria that we look at. whether it's related to pollution, noise, those kinds of things. So I've put some ideas there. I haven't flushed out what exactly criteria. That's for future discussion. The other use that I've put in here is the use of rock crushing, screening, topsoil, those kinds of uses. Instead of them being a permitted as of right use, which is how they've come in Connecticut Soils as an example, I am suggesting that maybe we make those accessory uses to a primary use. I just don't think we're a big enough town to be able to accommodate a primary use of a rock crushing operation, just between the noise and the volume of trucks and just the experience we've had so far. It's hard to imagine this expanding somewhere else in town and being a use that we want to see bigger. So it's something for you to consider. So I'm going to give you these three on the way out the door. Two of them I'd like to send off to Prague with your permission, and the third one we can talk about a little bit more in January and try to flush out a little bit further.
Okay.
Could I mention one other thing? I noticed that we last time approved our schedule of meetings, and one of our meetings is on Election Day.
That was the other thing we needed to bring up. So
Yeah.
yes, we need to change that.
So,
November 8th.
I don't think we have any problem with you sending those first two things to Prague.
Okay, great, thank you.
And we'll just have a motion to change our meeting date from November 8th to November 15th in 2022.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, and
That's it, great.
I think we're all set. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.